All right, 8-6, and thank goodness that one is out of the way. Now, that was a relatively decisive win, to say the least, for the Indianapolis Colts, and it's a good thing it was, because that game right there was so important for this team. And now, that's not breaking news. Obviously, everyone knew that. The playoff picture in the AFC is an absolute mess. But when you look at the way the Colts played last week against the Bengals, the fact that they had not beaten the Steelers since the year 2008, and there had been a meaningful amount of games between these two in that time. It's not like one of these weird coincidences where they'd only versed each other a couple times. We verse the Steelers often. We get knocked off by the Steelers often. And the Steelers themselves, just like us, right? Everything that you could say about the Indianapolis Colts this week in terms of how important this game was, the fact that you just have to have this victory if you want playoffs, really, not that mathematically you'd be eliminated with a loss, but a win certainly makes things a hell of a lot more in your favor, keeps them in your control. Everything that Colts fans felt about this game, the Steelers fans and the Steelers felt the same exact way. Both of these teams had everything to play for, which means we were going to find out the truth in this game as to who was better, the Colts or the Steelers. This is when you find out who teams really are, and as it turns out, the Indianapolis Colts are the better team as it currently stands. And when Steichen was hired in the offseason, back when Anthony Richardson still roamed the field, one of his things, well, I guess he wasn't drafted yet, if I'm not mistaken, but Steichen had been like, yo, we want to throw to score and run to win. And that was an awesome coined phrase, but, there was a lot of speculation about what the heck that meant. Was it just like a buzzword or a buzz term? I don't even know. You get my point. It's kind of just words when it's spoken. But this was like a perfect example of exactly that formula. Those words were put onto the field in this one. In fact, that might have been the best example of throw to score, run to win we had all year, because Steichen, as much as I love his play calling, I have to say, with Gardner Minshew at quarterback, he generally starts these games, Shane Steichen that is, with a bit more of a pass-heavy script, a game script in terms of play calling, then really, I guess, is desirable by my taste. But if it works, it works. Regardless, we did this without Zach Moss, Jonathan Taylor, and Michael Pittman for much of this game. I mean, adversity is the word that has often described this Indianapolis Colts season. We overcame some adversity again in this one. The Colts now sit at the 6th seed with the Bengals sitting there at the 7th seed. Here's how it really is going into the end of the year for the Indianapolis Colts. Listen, we cannot take for granted any game in the NFL. There's no such thing as an easy game. But of course, when you look at something, you can acknowledge when something is likely to be easier than a different set of games. I'm really talking about the schedule moving forward. Despite the fact that we know all these teams have something to play for, if the Colts are a playoff team with the ending stretch that they have, they are gonna win those games. A playoff team would win the stretch that the Colts have coming up. It started against the Steelers, and a nice trend to break to really have us feeling good going in to next week against, the Falcons, right? I know all the teams we verse, sometimes the order in the heat of the moment, I forget. We have the Falcons next week, I'm 99% sure. And we're about to find out the truth about these Indianapolis Colts. And of course, we just want to celebrate the win. We should celebrate the win, baby. Go Colts! We're 8-6. We're the 6th seed, right? But I do pride myself on having a little bit of objectivity over here at this channel. So I'm going to give my important notes from this game, both good and bad. And then we're going to go on to have a relatively stress-free Sunday, which, not for anything, with the cardiac Colts, is not usually what we deal with on a Sunday afternoon and a Sunday night. But the Titans and the Texans obviously going to be one to watch tomorrow. We're rooting for the Titans, the Bills, and the Cowboys. I mean, what a game that is for the Bills. When you think about all the teams in the AFC playoff picture right now that were at 7-6, coming into this week, you got the Colts, the Texans, the Steelers, the Bills, who we're talking about right now, the Bengals. Only 2 of those teams can make it. And to think that the Bills wouldn't be one of them, it is kind of just goes against what you would think in the game of football, right? With Josh Allen overall, we generally defer to the quarterback. That's a huge game for the Buffalo Bills, but we'll be rooting for those Cowboys. And then the Jags and the Ravens on Monday is a huge game as well. If the Jags lose, they're 8-6. Now, of course, all of these things are out of our control. We did our job, which is really all we have to focus on for the purpose of showing up on the field. But for the sake of discussion on the show, of course, we could talk about whatever the hell we want. But a Jags loss results in a mathematical tie atop the AFC South. Despite the Jags having beat us twice, we'd still be right there. But ultimately, it's a little bit more about securing the wild card than it is the division. It would just be hysterical for the Jaguars fans talking like they're the New England Patriots dynasty with Tom Brady after having really between the second half of last season and the first half of this season, they were talking as if they had 3 years of accomplishments. Jags are likely going to win the division. It's not my point to hate on them, but it's kind of funny how the NFL works. You can't take it for granted. So go Ravens, go Bills, go Texans. But without further ado, let's talk about this Steelers game just a little bit, just some things I'm noticing. But before we do, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Justin. This right here is the Ride on the Bench Colts cast. As always, I'm asking anyone who's enjoying this episode, go ahead and shoot it a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible on the way to a Super Bowl victory this year. And of course, if you want to be a part of the journey moving forward, you can subscribe. We're closing in on 1,900, may already be there, but 2,000 is the goal, then 3,000, 5,000, 20,000, a million, 5 trillion, right? We're going to turn everyone into a Colts fan. There's going to be aliens on different planets that are Colts fans if I have my way. But it all starts with the like and subscribe from you. Most importantly, enjoy the video. We'll get back to business. That's the housekeeping. And I want to start by talking about Matt Gay just a little bit because he right now is in a slump. And us Colts fans just cannot get past some of the kicker woes. Now, Matt Gay, let's be fair, was spectacular the entire season up until last week. Now, he has been pulling it to the left essentially ever since that first one last week. And midway through this game, he seemed to have corrected it, but then started pushing to the right. So as a kicker, it is such a mental battle. And listen, I can't kick a football worth a lick. If you gave me 20 attempts on an extra point, I'd be able to make maybe 1 or 2. So it's not like I understand how to be a great kicker. But what I do understand, maybe from the great Pat McAfee, is how much you're kind of like a sniper, right? When you compare football to war, the kickers and the punters are kind of like the snipers, like the long-range gunmen. It's a precision type of thing. And mentally, if you're not locked in, it's hard. Matt Gay, whatever he has going on right now, he's got to work through it because when you just talk about opportunities to score, now I know one of them was a 56-yard field goal, but we know Matt Gay has the leg to make that, and that 56-yarder wasn't even close. You talk about that one in the beginning of the game that he pulled to the left, and then the one he doinked on the right from 43 yards out. Those 2 field goals and the DJ Montgomery drop in the end zone, I mean, in terms of opportunities, that could have potentially been a 43-13 game. I think the Steelers, off the top of my head, only had 1 missed opportunity towards the end when they ended up punting, when they had maybe like a 55-yard field goal for Chris Boswell. So if everyone scored on all their opportunities in this game, off the top of my head, the Colts would have won 43-16. So 30-13 is a obviously great situation for them to be in, but 43-13, I don't know why I'm bringing that up. I guess just to point out how important it is that Matt Gay figures this out. Gardner Minshew, clean game out of him. A damn good game out of Gardner. I mean, if we can run the ball like that and Minshew is able to play like that, the Colts are a hard team to beat for anyone, particularly the teams that they're going to be versing going into the end of the year. And then most importantly, I want to talk about the defense. This team did what it should against the Steelers offense that has struggled. That is now 19 straight games with a turnover. Solid pass rush again in this one. I believe 4 sacks off the top of my head. I will say one thing for the Gus Bradley haters, because I'm about to take one position on your side, despite the fact that, listen, I don't think he's the best defensive coordinator in football, but I certainly don't think he needs to be fired right now, quick and in a hurry. The amount of space that we're giving teams on like these quick hitches on 3rd and 3 does seem relatively unacceptable. I mean, you have to think on the one drive earlier in the game, there was a 3rd and 3 over the middle to Freiermuth. There was another one where Trubisky missed the throw to Freiermuth over the middle, had him and Allen Robinson on a quick 5-yard hitch on the outside. In short yardage situations, you can't give things that easily. I mean, the Steelers aren't going to convert because their offense isn't that great, but the Colts have to be better than that. So just something to point out. But again, 4 sacks, 3 forced turnovers for this defense and a real disciplined game. only one discipline, only one penalty on defense, one penalty on offense. We had the holding on Jalen Jones, and we had the false start on Blake Freeland, who was for a moment in that game getting absolutely mugged by TJ Watt. I was getting a little nervous, but ultimately things worked out in our favor. 2 penalties for 10 yards for the Indianapolis Colts. So when the Steelers have over 100 yards in penalties and the Colts have 10 yards in penalties, hard to lose a game like that. I mean, that right there, like last week was a losing football game. This was a winning football game for the Colts, and now we're on to the end of season stretch. Kind of funny how earlier in the season we looked at this part of the end of the season and said this one is going to be easy, but it just goes to show kind of how quickly everything changes in the NFL, because starting with the Bengals, we were like, here's our easy stretch. The Bengals have been on fire. So we ended up losing that game. The Steelers, sure, an easy game, but now we have the Falcons coming up, loaded with weapons. The Raiders, we thought might be one of the easiest matchups, if not the easiest matchup, just dropped 63 on the Chargers. And I'm not saying they're a 63-point per game team, but, all of a sudden, things get a little complicated, and you just have the feeling that that game at the end of the season against the Texans is going to be huge. I have a feeling that's going to end up being for the 7th seed and the final playoff spot, but it's hard to tell. I mean, the Bengals look good. The Bengals are a team we have to worry about. The Bills are a team we have to worry about. I mean, on the outside looking in, I can see how anyone would have the Colts not getting into the playoffs, but as fans, we know what the team can do, and we know what we have in front of us, and we know it's winnable. It's just a matter of taking it 1 week at a time. And I mean, that's my reaction to the game. A little bit more to talk about this week as it continues. We want to see what happens with Michael Pittman and see what's going on with Zach Moss. I mean, there's really been nothing, at least as I record this. I am releasing this on Sunday morning, so probably by the time this is out, there will be an update on Zach Moss, but we have to know what's going on with Zach Moss and Michael Pittman. If not, we have to sit here and kind of talk about on offense. I mean, what can you try to do that is going to help? Because Pittman is a guy this year. It's hard to imagine the offense working half as good as it has without him. And, Pittman can kind of come up into that role, or rather Pierce can kind of come up into that role a little bit, but it's nice to see DJ Montgomery get involved. What would the Colts offense look like without Zach Moss and Michael Pittman as the week starts and we get a little bit more clarity on what's going on? That's definitely a topic to talk about. But for now, enjoy the Sunday, relax, sit back, drink a beer. Know that the Colts already won and the rest of your Sunday is quite all right. Until next time, my name is Justin. This right here is the Ride in the Bench Coltscast. Was the Ride in the Bench Coltscast. As always, go Colts.